Well, hello there, so good morning. Now we're going to go into 4.5 and 4.6. What is the species diversity and why is it important? And what role does species play in an ecosystem? Let's find out, shall we? Alright there, partners, what do we got here? What is species diversity? Species diversity is a major component of biodiversity and tends to increase the sustainability of an ecosystem. That is right. That is correct. Right? So species diversity is made up of two things. We have species richness and evenness. So richness is just the number of different species in an area. How many do you have? Cats and dogs are two different species. So the richness in a house where there's only cats and dogs is 2. Okay? It says more productive and stable. I'll say that for the next slide. Then we have species evenness. Okay? That is just how many individuals in that species do you have. In my classroom, I have roughly 28 students per class. So the evenness of humans in my class is 28. Right? We good? Good. Alright, species-rich hypothesis. This is pretty self-explanatory, but let's do it. First hypothesis says the more diverse an ecosystem, the more productive it's going to be. That pretty much makes sense. But for an example, think about a tropical rainforest. Very, very diverse. The warm climate, the rain, will lead to lots and lots of different plants and animals that live in that ecosystem. And they're some of the most productive ecosystems on the planet. The second one says the greater species richness and productivity, the more stable or sustainable the ecosystem. That makes sense too, right? If you have a lot of diversity, it's going to be productive, it's going to be able to be self-sustaining, you get higher levels of biomass resulting as a product of that, which makes sense. You have a ton of plants in the rainforest, a lot of biodiversity is very sustainable. Wow, groundbreaking theory. Okay, so 4.6. What roles do species play in ecosystems? So, they play a specific ecological role called its niche, which we learned about in another lecture. And now we're going to look at these different niches. Native organisms, non-native, indicator species, keystone species, and foundation species. Let's do it. Natives versus non-natives. Native means it hollers from there, I guess. Right? So they normally live there in the ecosystem. The alligator is native to Florida. Non-natives, deliberately or accidentally introduced. And not all of them are bad, but we tend to think of them as bad. If they are bad, we call them an invasive non-native. This is a picture of air potato. We have that here. It is an invasive non-native, and it is destroying certain ecosystems. So usually when we think about non-natives, we don't really like them very much. Okay, indicator species provides early warning signs of damage to an ecosystem. And these are all the different organisms that can act as indicator species. So if you're not sure, let me give you a couple examples. Number 1, have you ever heard of the canary in the coal mine reference? Back early mining, before we had technology and air filters and programs that would tell us what the air quality is in these mine shafts, they would bring down a canary. So if methane was released or carbon monoxide was released while mining for coal, then the small respiratory system on a bird would become compromised. That bird would keel over and die before the humans were negatively affected. So if that canary died in that mine shaft, that indicator species to everyone in there, get the hell out. Got it? Amphibians are a great example as well of water quality because amphibians don't drink water, right? Via osmosis, it comes through their skin and moves into their body. So, if there are toxins in there, a lot of the amphibians will die. So if you're ever hiking and you're looking around at this body of water and it looks pristine, you see lots of frogs and believe it or not, lots of insects, everything's buzzing about, it's probably safe in a pinch to drink that water. But if you go up to it and it looks crystal clear, but all the frogs are dead on the shoreline, don't drink it. Don't do it. You're going to die. Okay, keystone and foundation. Very often confused with each other. So let's go through it and talk about how to remember the difference. Keystone species, a large effect on the types and abundance of other species in the environment. They regulate and sustain the ecosystem. But, write this down or highlight it or whatever, they do not create those ecosystems. They just help regulate and sustain them. And as a cause, they regulate the species. So pollinators are a good example, top predators, wolves, they minimize the herbivores and the other organisms in that food chain and help keep everything in check in the ecosystem that's already created. Now, foundation species is separated from keystone because they actually shape and create the habitats. So, we'll look at elephants. In Africa, and especially in Asia too, they have a lot of jungles. There are paths that are cut through the jungles for the elephants, ripping up the trees. Then they get to an area, a large area, and they just rip every single tree, bush, and shrub up and make a huge plains area where they come together, gather, munch some grass. Sometimes they actually can dig down to extend water holes. So they are creating these environments. A lot of the plains of Africa, their creation was credited to the elephants and their love of ripping up trees. Same thing with beavers. They turn a river ecosystem into a lake ecosystem by damming up portions of it. And as soon as that happens, you turn fast-flowing water into non-moving water, which has it's a completely different ecosystem with its own separate species that now move into that area. So, creating versus sustaining. That was a small one. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you in Chapter 5. Have a wonderful day.